What is up, guys? I hope you're all doing well today, and welcome to S.N.O.W Survival A Fallout 4 collection. So today I'm going to be showing you all of my mod settings and in-game settings, so that if you'd like to follow along with exactly the way I have set up and been playing through this collection, you can also do the same. This collection does have a lot of things that you can tweak and change however you'd like. So obviously you're free to do it however you'd like and set up the game in any way you please. I've tried to leave it very modular so it can be adjusted and added to however someone would like. But we'll get into how I have mine set up. So we'll just quickly run through the normal settings. I play on the hard difficulty. I haven't started doing a survival specific run yet. I've mostly been testing and just kind of checking out the way my collection works and playing through some different content in the game, along with just general exploring and having a good time. And we'll get into why the difficulty here doesn't really matter much a little later. And come down here, I've got my controller settings off. The rest of that doesn't really matter. In the controls, I do have one set up here. So I have changed my activate button to F and left both Q and E unbound, which took a little bit of switching things around in here because by default I want to say Q is your hotbar and E is obviously activate. You need those buttons free for the lean feature unless you prefer to use something else like mouse buttons. I like it on Q and E, so I had to rebind those. Everything else here I believe is basically vanilla settings. Yeah, nothing here matters too much. Into display, I have mine all about half just to try and keep performance decent. I haven't had any problems with this setup so far, so I could probably crank it a little higher, but having a little bit of fog, snow, and all that going on, there's not a big need to have these way up into the sky here, so I leave them about half. HUD opacity obviously full so you can see your HUD. You can change that as you like. All these colors don't really matter. The one note I would give is I do use the Pip-Boy flashlight mod so that it's an actual flashlight instead of just a little aura glowy around you. So usually I believe you can change this however you like, but I like it to be a normal like white flashlight. So mine I just kind of meet in the middle, and the flashlight's brightness does seem to be dictated by how bright these are. So for example, if I moved these way up here and matched them so they're all white, my flashlight should be substantially brighter. Yeah, as you can see, it's decently bright. I like it a little bit dimmer for immersion, but obviously this is something that you can choose however you would prefer. I usually have mine just barely above the halfway point here, and I've been enjoying it, but do with it as you please. Audio, this will be mostly up to you guys individually. I like voices being higher up. The music that I have added in this collection from the Stalker series through a mod is a little on the loud side, so I found that I had to turn the music down just a little bit. I like the footsteps being just a little bit on the louder side. As someone who's played a lot of Tarkov, I like the chunkier, heavier noises, and having a mod that adds noises like that, I like having the footsteps louder, but I was seeing that some people end up having to turn their volume for footsteps down quite a bit. This is just where I have mine. Radio, reverb, and ambiance, all that kind of stuff I've got maxed. So, and all of these things should also be controlled through master. You won't have an issue with that not working, so you can always adjust that however you like. And that does it for the basic in-game settings. Now let's move into the mod settings. So, assuming you were able to download the whole thing and you were able to get in-game and you're now trying to set up all of your mods through the MCM settings manager, it should be set up exactly like this. If it's not, I'll just be going down and I will name off each mod that I'll be adjusting settings in. So, better locational damage. In this one, I changed a couple things. We'll check through here. So, in this one, I have headshots on, deadly headshots on, and that whole head destruction and helmet protection settings all the way on. This allows most NPCs and humanoid enemies to be killed with a single headshot if you manage to pull off said headshot. I like the setting for somewhat realism and also to make the zombies more manageable because these zombies have a lot of health, and I like to have the drive of having to shoot them in the head. This is something that you can adjust as you please, but this is my preferred headshot manager here. And then you'll want to turn bleeding and bandage settings off all the way across the board, which I'll explain later. I still have staggering on. It just kind of adds to the immersion when getting hit or shot. It adds a lot of feedback, so I tend to leave it on, but if it annoys you a lot, you could come in and turn it off. Brutality and Dismemberment, I've just got on across the board. Block and Melee, we've got just on all the way across the board. This should start as off, but I enabled stealth kills. I haven't managed to sneak up and assassinate anyone yet, but supposedly you can. And then incoming limb damage, I've left as it starts. And default, shotgun knockback off, heavy weapon restrictions off. Just to give you the simple version, it makes you move slower when you're using heavy weapons, miniguns, any of those kind of added bigger weapons, flamers and all that. I turn that off. I don't like when it makes me real slow, since I tend to play without power armor. This is a fairly unpower armor themed collection. And then leveled lists. So this section here in better locational damage is kind of an odd series of settings that you can change, seeing that this is mostly dealing with damage and armor ratings and whatnot, but I have actually enjoyed it. So what this does is it allows you to control the rate of gaining loot. And this works on polar opposites, so the way this would be is ammo loot chance 25. This would actually be 75, so 0 is 100, and 100 is 0. Why exactly it works like that, I'm not sure, but that is the way it is. So I have mine set at 25 for ammo loot chance, or 75%. So you'll also, on a lot of these, you'll have the primary loot chance, which is the chance of something spawning in the container. In my case here, there would be a 75% chance that I find loot in containers that can have loot. You can adjust this how you please, but I've found a pretty good balance that I'm enjoying. And then you've got usually these three other tabs, the different amounts, less, average, and more. By default, this starts with 0% of getting less and 0% of getting more. I didn't really understand that, so what I went ahead and did is I left less and average as is, and then gave myself some chance at finding extra ammo, so to speak. So I've set mine at 55, another one you could tweak however you like. And then cabinets, I feel like that's just a low loot, mostly just junk item container. So I've left that one at having a 85% chance. So again, 100% chance. You get so few of them anyways. When you find a cash register, you might as well get money out of it. Register chance, again, 100%. Coolers, 15 or 85 again. Low food items, so if you're playing survival and you want to be able to find food items more regularly, put that all the way to 0. If you want it to be a little sparser and harder to find food and chem items in the coolers, turn it down. Duffel bags I have at 100% chance. You don't find them very often, and they're one of the main non-buying or crafting ways of getting weapons, besides killing much stronger enemies than you. So I've turned this all the way to 100% chance, because when I do manage to find one of these in a camp or whatnot, I want it to have something cool in it. Getting the big loot at the end of a camp you've cleared out. So I like that at 100. Explosives, 80% chance, so you don't get grenades and mines and whatnot constantly, but you have a decent chance of finding them. Personally, I like having this a little higher, just because there are quite a few hordes and a lot of zombies running around, and sometimes it is nice to be able to chuck several grenades at them. So realism might not be quite what's in store here, but I do like having that a little higher. And then much like with ammo, kind of a 50-50 chance whether I get an average amount or slightly more. Medical only at 75. This has been a pretty good balance for me. This setup does make medical items quite valuable. The MAME system, even though we're using the lite version of it, is definitely a lot more hardcore than vanilla gameplay, and just roaming around exploring and fighting things, I've definitely needed quite a few medical supplies, because you can get messed up pretty quickly out there. It's definitely not easy, so I like this around 75 just as a nice balance of it still feels good and is important when you do get medical supplies, but it's not like vanilla where you'll end up with 200 plus stacks of stim packs without ever having to worry about it, because you're also looking for other types of meds now. So this has been a pretty good balance for me. And then like the others, I didn't change anything and just gave me about a 50-50 chance of finding a little extra. Toolboxes, tool cases, 85%, just mostly for junk items, for supplies and whatnot. Trunks, which are the big loot ones generally found after camps, I put it 100. That's kind of what you fight through camps to get to, so getting all the way through that and having absolutely nothing in it would suck, so I have that at 100% chance. And then wood crates, Again, mostly just junk items. I've got that one at 75. And just to make sure it's known in case you don't want to read through, or maybe it doesn't say up here or anything, this won't change quality of loot, so this isn't going to make you suddenly find crazy high tier items or anything. This is just the general amount of will you find something, and is there a chance of getting a little extra or a little less of whatever is in there. NPC configuration. So NPCs will have healing items, buff items, and all that kind of stuff on them, and you can come in here and control how often they'll use things at the health threshold and whatnot for when they will use things. Chance to use heal item, 15%. So what this means is if a character hits this threshold, whatever you choose, again I have mine at 50, they will have a 15% chance to use up the healing items in their inventory and heal themselves. Something, little fun thing you can adjust, same with buff items, you can just kind of choose it. I believe I left all this vanilla except for the heal threshold. I thought it was a little high to be using heal items, so I turned it down to 50. Weapon penetration settings, I haven't messed with this. From reading, it basically just means that certain calibers in the game will ignore more of the armor rating associated to it. I left all this alone, I didn't mess with it at all. Widgets, I didn't move any of this. So Chaotic Sun is a DLC sized mod. It's cool. I'm not messing with any of these. I haven't gotten into it yet, so I don't know quite how these work. So I have left them be. And then Condition Boy, which was the little fella in the top left showing you the physical condition of all your limbs, which is very important in this mod, especially when using MAME. The only thing I've done here is I have moved it to the top left and made it ever so slightly smaller in scale and a little tiny bit transparent just because it started a little larger on the screen than I'd prefer. Another one you can do whatever you like with. You can also make it Vault Girl if you'd prefer, whichever you'd like. Crafting highlight fix. This removes that weird green glow when you're trying to look at something or crafting or modding and makes it really hard to tell what you're actually doing to it or what it looks like. So this fix changes that. Disable crafting highlights on, disable trade menu highlights on, and the power armor stuff I have left alone. And then E3 PC, so this is the third person camera edits. These standing and sneaking, you can come in here and manually change where things are stationed, so like where the camera is in relation to your character per each thing, whether it's general gun camera or melee camera. I tend to leave this alone, and what I do is come in here to editing mode, and I set up myself with a very easy editor, which will be as follows on the screen. If you want to pause, I'll still read them out quickly. So to toggle the shoulder, I put on one of my mouse buttons, which, if you've played a third-person shooter, moves the camera from behind your right to left shoulder. This functions pretty well. I haven't had too many issues with this mod. It's definitely a lot better than the vanilla third-person camera. I don't use it a ton, but sometimes I'll use it for screenshots or in an open area where I want to see how much my character's actually sticking out of cover and whatnot when fighting. So I'll use third person here and there, but anyway. Enter and exit edit mode is number pad 5, and then up is 8, down is 2, left is 4, right is 6, zoom out is 7, and zoom in is 9. So you would toggle the mode, and then using the corresponding arrow keys you've keybound here, you can just live adjust your camera. One other thing you can do to make it more quick at making the changes is the script update interval and edit mode update interval. So what I've done here is pulled all the way down just so that as I am pushing the buttons to change the camera while editing, it does it very quickly instead of having a long delay. Not sure why there's a delay at all to begin with, but I just turned it down so it reacts a lot quicker. Equipment and crafting overhaul I have completely left alone. Fall UI inventory I have left alone. Obviously these are all things you can come in here and adjust, and if you're familiar with modding and playing Fallout 4 with mods, you've probably messed with some of these before. And then Fall HUD is one I have changed a little bit in. So as I said at the beginning of the game, I have the crosshair on, but it only appears when I am in third person and aiming, and annoyingly enough, when I just lower my weapon, I haven't quite got the crosshair to work perfectly, but in order to just have it off when I'm using a gun in first person and on when I'm in third person but only aiming, I have just turned everything down here all the way to the left, none, off as much as I can, and then under dot I have it over here at dot. It's worked pretty well. Obviously, crosshair's a personal choice, so do with it as you please. And I've made it red to kind of simulate a laser sight, and a lot of the guns in this mod will also have laser sights that sometimes match up to the center of the screen. So just a little personal choice there. And then what I have used for my HUD layout is the square UI, which, if downloaded properly, should just appear when you go to import a layout. I do not want to do that because it'll reset mine, but that is the base layout that I used. I moved things around on my screen a little bit just to be more where I want them, a little off to the right, moved the map around in a few of these, but this is the square UI is the basis for what all of my HUD is, and you can move all of it around and do whatever you like with it. Icon library I've left alone, follow UI map I've left alone, follow UI workbench I've left alone, item sorter. I went in and turned off a little bit of the auto sorter features just because some of them I don't like having in all the tabs. Another one you can choose as you please. But now we're getting into a few of the important ones. So State of Decay 2 styled feral infestations. I have this on running so that it's on. It is off by default. I have the infestation difficulty at medium. The chance as at default for 5 or 5% chance. I turned the growth timer up to 4 just so that you're not constantly getting bombarded with messages about an infestation and trying to attack a settlement or anything. And then show infested feral targets off. Feral protection removal is on. When set to on, anything can kill the ferals, so if they run across other groups, if they move to your settlement and you have defenses and characters, they'll also be able to kill them, so I would recommend leaving this on. Allow settlement attacks. I don't have a settlement yet in my playthrough, but I have this on so that there's a further added reason to actually build defenses on your settlement. Allow extended infestation. This just means that up to 6 infestations can be active at once instead of 3. Allow horde random encounters, I have on. Allow bloaters, I have on. And then allow friendly deaths. When set to on, settlers, followers, and companions might die from failed horde attacks or plague. Basically, just if you fail a defense or you're not there for the defense of a settlement, they do have a chance of losing the fight, and settlers and followers have the possibility of dying because of that. I have mine on. Obviously, if you don't want it quite so hardcore or have to go manage each of those when they pop up, you can just turn this off so they can't die from it. And that is it for there. And then in the game configuration menu is a few more important ones. So this is a lot of character controlling stats you can tweak. As far as action points and health, I have left it alone. I slightly turned up melee damage, just for when you are stuck using a garbage melee weapon or a crowbar or a pipe or whatever it is, because you're out of ammo and can't find anything. Zombies have a lot of health, and when you don't manage to land perfect headshots, which can be a bit of a pain on zombies and, just with the poor headshot hitboxes on melee, I turn this up a little bit to make it a bit more reliable, but still being difficult. And then this one is a little bit cheesy. I have my carry weight maxed at 5,000. I have played this game so many times, and I am just tired of having to manage every tiny bit of resource junk I pick up. So I just max this out and don't worry about carry weight. It's obviously not the most realistic, but I just find junk having weight very, very annoying. We do have a weightless junk mod, but I've noticed that a lot of mod added items don't function with it. So you still end up picking up a lot of loose things and have your carry weight maxed all the time for no good reason. So I just have this maxed to not worry about it. And then jump height, I usually turn up, it starts at 90. I usually turn it anywhere from like 120 to 150. I like being able to jump a little higher, even though it's very silly. I find a lot of traversal a lot more comfortable with a slightly higher jump height. But obviously, if you prefer to not be a pro basketball player with major hops, you can turn this down and leave it closer to default. This is just my personal preference to make it a little more friendly for traversal. And then sprinting modifiers and swimming I've left all alone. And then in difficulties, one of the major changes, and why earlier when I said what difficulty you choose really doesn't matter, is because I usually tweak things in here to try and keep the game balanced kind of further on. One thing that's hard to manage in mods is a lot of weapons have very different types of damage modifiers and values. So you'll find that, you have an SMG from one mod, and for some reason that SMG does 20-30 damage more than anything else even near its class, just because. And to try and keep the game competitive and scale well into the late game, I have gone ahead and set damage taken to 1.5 times because I play on hard for legendary spawns being slightly increased and not having to tweak those values. So I've got that at 1.5, so 1.5 times damage. And then when I do my survival playthrough of it, I will probably also switch that up to 1.5 times, give or take a little. And then damage done, I have just at 1.0, so just flat damage. You do normal damage. Normally, the harder difficulties make you do substantially less damage, which I find kind of silly. So I've just set it at normal, called it good. If you'll remember, we have the headshot multipliers and other ways to deal with certain NPCs. A lot of bigger creatures and bosses are still fairly substantially hard, and the headshots only do the normal damage multiplier. They don't get insta-killed, so death claws, big things like that, you won't be one-tapping. They're vanilla in that sense. And then effect durations and everything down here I have left standard. I have changed, I believe, nothing here in the DLC. Random encounters are on. Everything else here, I believe, is vanilla. I have a slightly higher base experience gain, mostly because I was trying to test the level listing of weapons without taking forever to do the testing, so obviously you could leave this alone or crank it up if you wanted. Mine is at 2.5 times right now with a slight intelligence multiplier. But again, most of that is just for testing purposes. Normally you would want to leave this right around base. Gameplay, this I have left all alone. This just changes damage resistance values and whatnot for the different armor types. I have left all of this alone so you don't have to worry about that. Game world, hours to clean corpses, hours to respawn cells, and hours to respawn cleared cells. I turned all of this down just so that things come back within the world quicker. I found that it was a little annoying when I'd wander back into a large camp or one of the military bases or hospitals or whatnot, and after hours of playing find that they're still completely wiped and there's nothing there anymore. So I've turned this all down just to keep the world more alive. Legendary, this is the thing I do not change and don't mess with, and that's why I just put it on hard. Have a higher chance at legendaries without messing with it at all. NPCs, we've got a few tweaks in here. So I have bonus health per level at 3, because the reason for this is my hope is to slightly scale enemies' health throughout the game as I grow more powerful. And again, part of this is to compensate for a lot of the modded weapons having a much higher damage rate than a lot of the vanilla weapons. And so this just kind of helps them not all become one shot no matter where you shoot them throughout the whole playthrough. And then general throw cooldown. These two will control how often AI likes to spam throw grenades at you. I've adjusted it up a little bit simply so they can't back to back to back throw grenades at me, but they still can throw them. You can adjust this however you like. I've got it about 35 to 40 seconds. Dodge chance, which gives NPCs a chance to just magically dodge your attacks and bullets. I find this really stupid. If you manage to shoot someone in the head, it should count you as shooting them in the head. So I have turned this off and left the rest of it alone. And everything else through here, I do believe I have left completely alone. If you're having performance issues, you can come in here and try to turn down a few of these particle effects and debris and whatnot, just to tune back things a little bit. I have mine slightly turned down, but I really didn't notice a big difference. And then weather workshop and all these I have left alone. And then most of that is all good. Kill tips and hit sounds. So this can add a little customization to the sound on hitting an enemy with anything, what is said or what sound you hear when something is killed, and it also kind of adds a kill feed like at COD games or Battlefield or whatnot, you know, the little so-and-so has killed so-and-so with this weapon. The way I have this set up is on for kill tips and hit sounds. Hit sound type is Ghost Recon Wildlands. You have a few options, COD 4 Classic, the new Modern Warfare, and World War II. I like the Ghost Recon one the most, and then the rest of it I have turned off. Delete UI, off, top left, and then close kill sound. I find most of these a little too frequent and a little too annoying, so obviously you can mess with these as you please, but I have all that off. I just have the hit sound like Ghost Recon Wildlands. And then in MAME, so in here we've got all of our medical stuff, all of our damage to our self things, and we have to be a little careful in here, because if you'll remember, better locational damage has some settings that are similar or do the same types of things, such as the headshots and bleeding settings. And so here's where we have to fine tune that. So in bleed settings, I have all of this on. Any creatures, NPCs, and players can bleed. I believe everything but robots, or, you know, automatron and synths, but anything biological should be able to bleed. And then bleed damage, I have at 3 and 5, which is you take 50% bleed because, well, the bleeding happens very quickly and does a lot of damage very fast, and I found it really obnoxious, so I have it slightly turned down. Personally, I might also turn it down for enemies just to not let it be crazy fast on them also. That is what I have set there. And then locational damage, I believe I left this at default. I might have turned it down 1 on each, which is 3 and then 4, which shows you here the percent of normal damage dealt. So 3 would be 75% of normal damage dealt. Your limbs get destroyed very quickly in this mod, and armor only seems to somewhat help with stopping that. So like, you will take damage and your armor rating it'll make you not take as much damage to your overall health pool, but your limbs will still get all crippled and messed up pretty quickly. So I tuned this back, I want to say just a little bit. You can adjust it further depending on your tastes. Make companions and essential NPCs immune to limb damage. I recommend turning this on simply because it's really annoying if you have followers, they get hit and their limb is destroyed, and they don't have the many different medical items to fix that. They will just constantly yell about being injured and having pain and all this kind of stuff. So I tend to just not have them deal with the same limb system. And then in here, lethal headshots, I've turned all of this off. And the reason is I just like the way that the better locational damage headshot settings work a little bit better. I've tried with either one on and off, and I just slightly preferred the better locational damage one. So I've turned off all the headshot stuff within MAME, and I'm using the BLD's one. Injuries, enable bleeding messages, so wherever your little message tab is, you'll be told what kind of bleed you have and where. Enable bleeding visual effect, I left that on. Bleeding sound effect on. Bleeding sound and visual effects on NPCs on. Usually there'll be a little bit of just red texture going around on them to show that you've bled them. Pain causes blurred vision. So whenever one of your limbs gets below, I want to say about 50%, you will be in pain. And what this will do is cause your vision to get blurry in and out because you are in pain. I have almost turned this one off several times because it's really annoying when you have one limb slightly damaged, and even though you're at full health and everything else is fine, you can't see well because one limb is hurt and you just simply don't have the medical supplies to fix it. I have decided to leave it on simply for immersion's sake and to drive me to actually hoard, create, and hold on to proper medical supplies. Enabled extra crippled effects on player, such as draining AP, disarming, disable running, on, but I have tweaked them, so I cannot be disarmed. So instead of having the Skyrim thing where an enemy Fusro daws you and you chuck your weapon across the room because reasons, I can't stand that. I really hate that, so I have turned that off. Enable extra crippled chance on NPCs, which is all these same settings, but for NPCs I have that on. Enable crippled screen effects, I left that on. And this just adds some of that extra feedback, such as like your screen going red when you get shot in the head and things like that. And then crippled head specifically causes a contusion, which again is part of the visual phasing in and out of being able to see. I left that on. I did turn off blackouts, periodic damage, and disabling sprint, simply because you do get shot in the head a lot, and it's really annoying when you just simply can't see for a while, because you already have enough effects going on that do make it harder to see. I just turned this extra steps off, simply because most of the time when you get shot like that, it's hard to see, and your best course of action for survival is to simply turn and try and dash for the nearest cover in a wild panic, and simply standing out in the open and slow walking to where you're trying to get to quickly is really annoying, so I don't have it disabling that. And then the tinnitus, rumble sounds, and ringing, they're not particularly loud. I haven't had a problem with these, so I've just left them on for a little added immersion. Miscellaneous, I have food healing on. It doesn't seem particularly fast, and only some items seem to heal your health, so like Nuka-Cola Quantums and I think base Nuka-Colas will still add some healing as they did normally, though I believe it is a little slower. And then I don't have the show equipped gear and Pip-Boy's perks screen on. I have left that off, though you could change that if you like. And then reduce medical loot by NPCs. I turn this to 40%. It has a 50-50 on whether or not the NPCs will have different medical supplies. I slightly turned it up so NPCs have a 60% chance of having medical supplies. It still doesn't happen constantly. And then I have a photo mode personally just because of trying to get some pictures for the mod page, or the collection page I should say. SKK Combat Stalkers. This one is a lot of fun. So this one will randomly add in groups patrolling and hostile assassin squads, basically. So groups of enemies that will spawn near you or around you and try and kill you. I like this mod a lot because it adds a little bit more depth and a little more action to when you're wandering through a lot of the more open areas of the game and not actually like at a camp where there are enemies. So it just keeps you on your toes a lot more. So this will default all to off, so you'll have to turn on the patrols, on the stalkers. Vertibirds on. I'm personally thinking I might turn this off at least until a little higher level, because even though it doesn't start until level 10, you really don't have much going for you at level 10 usually, unless you found a really good loot drop or something. And so they're really strong and they can just destroy you wherever you're hiding. So they're a pretty difficult thing. I'm going to leave it on for now, but I think in the final, when I do the survival run, I'm going to turn that off. Spawn faction related actors, I've left that on. Difficulty, I've turned up to 125, which is hard difficulty equivalent. Number of hostiles is -1, which makes it random 2 to 8, and +1 per follower. And then spawn time, I have turned up a little bit. This will default much lower, but I've put it at 600 and then 1200 for minimum and maximum, just so that it's not constantly having groups attack you. Distance, I've left alone. And then this is the important one, show hostile notification. I have turned to nothing. I believe it starts on warning, which will tell you when a group is after you in the little notification tab wherever you have it on your HUD. I turned that off. I didn't want to know. I found it much more immersive when I would just come across groups or suddenly start getting shot at. So I turned off the warning. I prefer it that way. Settlement attacks off. This can be really annoying because they will not use normal pathing to your settlements. They can just basically randomly spawn anywhere within the distance allotted up here, and they can just spawn in your base. So I've left this one off. Interior attacks is off, only on player movement on, just to try and make them spawn as you're moving throughout the world. Protect innocent neutral actors from them, I have on. Headshot kills only, I have off, just so that they act like any of the other NPCs that I have in the game. That is it for there. And then I tried to use the toggle button for the Westech Tactical Optics. I was not able to do so. I had to use the in-game item and put it on my own hotbar built into the game in order to toggle night vision, but maybe this one will work for you. And then the last one is the zombie walkers, which is what adds the zombie apocalypse to this. So I have -1 speed, which is the random. Most of them are fairly slow, but you will find one here and there that will take a little lunge at you or move a little quicker. You can adjust this how you like. I have health at 90% because they do have wildly inflated health unless you headshot them. I turned it down just a tiny bit so that you could spray and pray into torso and eventually kill them, but it is definitely a lot more viable to aim for the head on zombies. XP, another thing, you can turn anywhere you like. I have it at 100. I was trying to level a little faster than normal, just so that I could progress a little quicker and get to test a lot more of my leveled loot and all that kind of stuff and see how it works. Legendary chance you can change. I left it at default 1%. And then loot enabled. So I've played both with this on and off, and they will still only have like ghoul level of loot. So it's mostly junk items, sometimes some money, sometimes a little ammo. But there's a lot of them, and I found that when I played with looting enabled on the zombies, I would get so many resources and so much money and decent amount of ammo so fast and so easily that for playing a little more realistically, I have turned it off and you also don't have to worry about looting every single zombie you kill. So I recommend it off, but obviously you do whatever you like. So damage multiplier I have up at 2 very hard because they are slow. It is fairly easy to maneuver around and not get caught by them, but I wanted them to hurt decently bad when they did catch me, so I've turned this up to 2, which is the equivalent of very hard. I might tweak a little further just depending on what point in the game I am, because armor rating does stop them from doing as much damage to you. So if you find that they're never an issue, too easy, and don't hurt you, you might pop in here and turn that up, depending on your preference. Bite animations and infection I've turned off. I just find animation attacks incredibly annoying, so that is off. And then the infection is literally just a bleed effect, so I've turned that off because they can already apply the MAME version of bleed to you, so that is off as well. And then spawn replacement, so this is what will cause things to be zombies instead of whatever they would normally. I have this on, and then the replacement count is at 3. Non-hostiles, protected, essential, and companions all off. Replace already dead corpses and skeletons are on. And then for all of the non-human actors, I have animal chance at 15%, so each animal that would spawn into the game has a 15% chance of instead being 3 zombies. So animals at 15, bugs I have at 100%. I hate fighting the bugs. I hate blood bugs, bloat flies, all that. I hate them. I just have all of them turning into zombies. Creatures, which would be like mirelurks, rad scorpions, things like that, again 10%. I don't want all of them being zombies. I want other creatures in the world, and there are a lot of mods in this list that add different creatures and whatnot, so I wanted to see them. I didn't want them all turning into zombies. Heavy knockers, which is bosses, behemoths, deathclaws, mirelurk queens, 0. I don't want them getting changed to zombies. And then everything else, robots, super mutant, synth, turrets, and other, all 10% chance of changing. And then in the factions, I have Children of Adam, Gunners, and Raiders all set to 10%, and then the major factions, settlements, and workshop NPCs all set to off, simply because that, I feel like, could make a lot of quests and cities very complicated, because this could, in theory, be changing people in the cities into zombies, which would be really obnoxious, so I have those all set to 0. Extra spawns, so this is not a replacer. This will not change any actors, NPCs, whatnot in the game. This just has a lot of different set spawn points, and you can choose the overall limit of enemies or zombies that can spawn at them. So you want this on. I have mine set to 170 zombies max in a local area around the character, 16 per spawn point, and spawn point rate of 9. You can turn this up if you want, all the way up if you want crazy zombie apocalypse, but if you're running a little lower tier machine, it can be a little resource intensive on the PC, so I've turned mine down just a little bit just to try and keep a higher frame rate and not have CPU bogged down issues, and it's been running pretty good for me, and I have a pretty middle of the road build, so this should be fine if you want to just copy mine, but another one you can adjust as you please. And that is it for all of my mod settings. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you have a good day. I hope you're enjoying the collection of mine up on the Nexus. I've been really enjoying it myself, and I plan to keep playing through it and do a couple playthroughs, because I'm really liking it. I like this quite a bit. I'll probably do a few videos just running around through the world and doing some stuff here and showcasing some things and mods within it and whatnot. But that is all, guys. Have a good one, and I will see you next time. Bye.